So yeah, we started, I've always gardened, so I've always loved gardening. So we started in our backyard and then quickly realized our backyard is pretty much full shade. So his parents have a ranch and they were nice enough to let us garden out there. But a few years ago, we started and we grow lots of produce, but we also grow a lot of varieties of peppers. So I think we had like 36 some varieties of peppers. And we were mostly just growing them for ourselves, but then we kind of ended up, we did well, so then we kind of had a lot of peppers. So we're like, well, maybe we could do like a farmer's market. So we started growing them at the selling them at the farmer's market. And then every year we just keep getting more and more varieties. We actually cut back this year. So this year we're only going to have about 201 varieties of peppers. That's down from 240 some last year. But each year we try different ones, we try new ones, see how they do, see how we like them, how the flavor is, how well they grow, how well they produce. So we'll add new ones, we'll cut out ones that we don't like. And then, yeah, we sell them at the farmer's market, as well as we make our own products. So if you didn't get one, there's packets of our spicy salt out there. So that is a mixture of a lot of different peppers. There's probably 50 to even maybe 100 different varieties of peppers that we dehydrate ourselves, we grind, and then we mix with kosher salt. We also keep bees, not on a grand scale, but we do have some. So we have honey, and then we combine those two, and so we also make a hot honey. But yeah, today we just wanted to share some of our knowledge on peppers. It's definitely the main thing we grow. People ask why we grow so many, and I said, well, I like gardening and he likes peppers, so that's just kind of what happened. So we kind of want to start with what is a chili pepper. And you know, sometimes you'll hear people say chilies, sometimes you'll hear people say peppers. I myself even will kind of go back and forth. So chilies originated in Brazil. The original chilies, they were just little red berries. And they believe they actually kind of evolved alongside birds because birds do not react to capsaicin, so they don't taste the spicy. So you'll see now in the stores, some of the bird seed will actually have pepper in it because the squirrels won't eat it. Mammals can taste the capsaicin, they can taste the spicy, but the birds don't. They evolved because the bird's digestive system will not hurt the seeds. So then the birds spread the seeds far and wide, helps the peppers grow, helps the peppers spread. Whereas mammals, with our molars, we tend to crush up those seeds. So the mammals taste the spicy until humans came along and were like, hey, we like this pain for some reason. And so we just kept eating them, even though the peppers kind of wanted the exact opposite of that. So the name chili versus pepper, just as the native peoples were not Indians but got called Indians, he did the same thing with peppers. So they offered him peppers, he ate them, and he thought, hey, this is spicy like black pepper, which is he was out looking for new spices because of the spice wars with India and everything. He was trying to find new spices. So he said, well, it's spicy like pepper, we'll just call it pepper. Whereas the indigenous people's name would have been something closer to the word chili. But he brought them back to Europe, and they've kind of spread from there. And now they're grown in pretty much every country around the world. So if we're looking at parts of a chili, I'm not going to go through all of this. The main thing I want to talk about is the placenta, the seeds, and where it says capsaicin glands. So if you want if you're cooking with peppers and you want it to be less spicy, they tell you to take out what? The seeds. The seeds do not produce heat. That's a myth. Where I think that comes from is the capsaicin is produced in the placenta. So in those ribs that go down the side of the peppers, that's where the heat is made. It makes that oil that contains the capsaicin. So yes, if you cut out the seeds, you're cutting out part of the placenta, but if you were to maybe just scrape off the seeds, you're not getting rid of any heat. So if you want it milder, you want to cut out that ribbing as much as you can and cut out that top part where the seeds are attached. And that will reduce the heat. Same if you ever want to taste a pepper, the mildest part is going to be right down here at the very bottom. So if you just want to take a little taste to see, how hot it is, or just for the flavor, start there. Just take a little bite off the very end, the blossom end there. So varieties. So this is actually a picture we took. These are all peppers we grew. I could name about half of them, but some of them I'm not totally sure. So as far as pepper variety, like I said, they're grown in pretty much every country. All different cultures have their own varieties that they've developed. So at least 4,000 varieties in the world. I believe we have a seed bank here in the US that has 6,500 varieties of peppers. And so some estimate it could be as high as 50,000 separate varieties of peppers. There's been a lot of people trying to breed new peppers. So, every year that we go to order seeds, there's new varieties people have developed. So it's just constantly growing. Colors, as you can see, peppers come in a lot of different colors. Most peppers will start out either green, blackish, purple, or yellow, and they will change color. Pretty much every pepper will change color. Even your green bells that you buy in the store, if left on the plant, those would turn color. They'd turn a red or an orange or a yellow. So if you are growing peppers and you want the best flavor, you want to wait until they turn color. There's almost no peppers that stay green. There is what's called a mustard pepper, but that one even does change from one shade of green to a more yellow green at the end. I don't like harvesting those because I'm always like, is this the right shade of green or is this not ready yet? But yeah, and then flavors. Obviously, if you don't have a great tolerance for heat, it can be hard to test those flavors. You are always welcome to ask Jai. Jai does not actually seem to have any reaction to capsaicin. So he is our flavor tester. He can eat any pepper, hottest of the hot, and he's fine. And then he'll be like, this one's not hot, Brandy, you can try this one. And then I'll try it and I'll be like, that is definitely hot. That's very hot. And he's like, oh, I didn't think it was. I'm like, it certainly is. But there are a wide range of flavors when you're growing peppers. There's fruity ones, there's more floral flavors, like habaneros. I hate habaneros. I know lots of people love them. I don't like the flavor. They sell heatless habaneros now that you can get. And I'm like, well, what's the point? This isn't even spicy, and now it tastes bad, so I don't want that. Smoky. There's what's called a chocolate pepper. They're kind of a like Coca-Cola brown color, and a lot of times those will have a natural smoky, earthy flavor to them. And then citrusy, a lot of the South American peppers, the ají peppers, will have a real nice citrusy flavor to them. That yellow one up top, I believe, is an ají pineapple, and those have kind of a fruity, citrusy flavor. Here's just a couple more varieties. I like these ones because this is what we named our 4 cats after. So that's Ahi, Nocturne, Hallows Eve, and Zulu. So why are chilies spicy? So spiciness is not actually a flavor. Like when they're talking about salty, sweet, savory, umami, spicy is not one of those flavors. Our taste buds do not taste spicy. What it is we have these, what was the word I keep forgetting? Receptors in our body, in our mouth, all over our body, and that's what helps us sense things. So when they come into contact with capsaicin, for whatever reason, they sense it as heat, the same heat like as if you put your hand near a fire. They sense that capsaicin as being heat, so they tell our brains, ouch, this is hot, we're burning. Even though it's not actually heat, that's just how those receptors interpret that. It's actually the same thing with like menthol in mint, except it's the opposite. It senses it as being something cold, and that's why when you eat mint, it's got that real cool feeling in your mouth. It's because those receptors are telling you, hey, there's something cold on me. That's also why if you get peppers on your hands, it'll burn, because those receptors are all over us. I know I'm one that's really bad for that. Even when we're planting our seeds, I have to wear gloves, because if I just have the seeds on my hand will burn for like 2 days. And my skin's super sensitive to it for whatever reason. And some people will have more of those receptors than others, which is why some people are more sensitive to the capsaicin and the heat than other people. A pepper's level of heat is measured in what's called Scoville heat units. So if you're ever looking at peppers and they have some info about it, it might say like SHU. That's the Scoville heat units. It was invented by Wilbur Scoville in 1912. It has since been replaced by a different method, but we still measure them in Scoville heat units. And the reason that changed was Wilbur, when he developed this method, it was, he took dried peppers, he basically made kind of like a tincture, he diluted it down, and then he would have just people taste it. And he would dilute it more and more with water. And so what this measurement is how many parts of pepper per water does it take until you can no longer taste the heat. So when we're talking, something that's 1,000,000 Scovilles, well, that's 1,000,000 parts of water per 1 part of pepper that it takes until you can't taste that heat. So now they do it with, in a lab. They have a process that they do, which is a little more accurate than just having some group of people taste them and be like, yeah, that's still spicy. So this is a Scoville scale. You'll see lots of posters and everything that have these. It's just kind of a range of where peppers are at. So if you come to our booth and we have all these weird peppers and you're like, well, how hot is this one? We'll kind of use something like this to help you determine. So bell peppers are going to be a 0. They have no heat. We're kind of in the low range until about jalapenos, Hungarian hot wax, and then you get into the medium range up until about 20 to 30,000, where you're getting into your cayennes, and then you're in the medium range. Up until about habaneros, you're in your hots, up until 1 million with the ghost pepper. And a lot of people come and they're like, oh, do you have the ghost pepper? I heard that's the hottest. And we're like, it's not. The ghost pepper hasn't been the hottest for years. At one point it did hold the Guinness record, but that didn't last real long. So ghost peppers are typically around 1 million Scoville. But then you get into your scorpions. Those are going to be, over 1 million. The Carolina Reaper, of course, was the record holder. That one is about 1.5 to 2.2 million. The same man who developed the Carolina Reaper then developed another pepper that he called Pepper X, which is now the hottest one in the world. That one's sitting at about, I think it's 2.69 million. That one you can't actually get the pepper, they just make it into products, but he hasn't released the actual pepper. So don't come to our booth and ask us for Pepper X. We don't have it. We'd love to grow it, but he won't share it. So talking a little bit about growing peppers. So if you're going to start from seed, which we start almost all of our plants from seed, you're going to want to start 8 to 12 weeks from last frost. We usually start ours either sometime in February or early March at the latest. You can get away with like late March. I wouldn't start any later than that. They just, they need a little more time than that. Heat mats are going to help a lot with germination, especially with like your super hot peppers. They like that heat. They want that real warm soil. The heat mats are pretty easy to find nowadays. Even at Walmart in the garden section, they'll have them. It's just a big black mat. It's the same size as your standard seed tray, so it just sits right on top of it, and that helps warm up the soil. And then we always put a dome over them until the seeds are germinating and start sprouting, just to keep that humidity in there. You don't want it drying out at all. It does take some patience sometimes. If you look on a seed packet, it's not real helpful because it will tell you the germination is somewhere between 7 and 40 days. So not real specific. We have had trays where we started them, and then weeks later, peppers will just sprout. So, you know, if you're sitting at 7 days and you're like, oh my gosh, they haven't sprouted yet, it's okay. Just, you know, give them some more time. Some varieties will take longer than others. Sometimes we'll have varieties that we're like, well, this one was a lot faster last year, and now it's just sitting here, and then it'll sprout. Like we had one, we grew ahi crystals this year. We didn't get any sprouts. So then a couple weeks later, we did a replanting, and about the same time where our replant sprouted, the first batch suddenly sprouted. So then we're like, well, we didn't even need these. So, you know, it just sometimes be a little patient. If they're not sprouting, it might just take a little longer. If you want to fertilize your seedlings, we recommend waiting until they have about 4 of those true leaves. So not the first little weird set of leaves that come up, but 4 of the regular shaped leaves before you start fertilizing, and then do like a half strength fertilizer. They want a lot of light. So like what we do is we have like big metal industrial shelves, and then we actually went and bought shop lights from Sam's Club because those are a really high lumen level, so they're very bright. And we just hang those from the shelves, and they hang over the top of the seedlings. If you aren't getting them enough light, you'll see they get really leggy. They get real long and lanky, and they'll kind of fall over. So they definitely want a lot of light. What I do is I just bought one of the little smart plugs. I plug the lights into that, and you can just set a timer. So it turns on every time the same day, and it turns off every time the same day, and I don't have to worry about remembering to turn it on and off. It's good to put a fan, and this is for any seedlings, on your seedlings. It kind of helps stimulate that wind, especially here. We know we're going to have wind outside. So it helps them get used to that wind and those outside elements, to just kind of have a fan blowing on them. And then once you're ready to start moving your seedlings outside, you want to do it gradually. So, you know, the first day, put them out maybe just for an hour, and then bring them back in. And they will probably kind of wilt. They'll look real sad. That's okay. They're just being dramatic. They do it the first day every year. Jai's always scared. He's like, oh my gosh, they're going to die. And I'm like, no, they're fine. It's okay. They're just not used to, you know, the sun and the outside air movement and everything. So like an hour the first day, you know, maybe a couple hours the second day, and just to keep doing a little more time. And then, you know, as long as it's warm enough at night, you can then just leave them outside for 24 hours until they're ready to go into the garden. If you're planting them in the garden, I don't recommend necessarily just going by air temperature. It's best to dig down a little bit and check your soil temp, because that's where the plants are going to be, right? The roots are going to be in the soil. Especially with peppers and tomatoes, they're real sensitive to the cold. Peppers cannot handle any frost. A few years ago, we had ours all planted, and then we did get a light frost. Every leaf died. We thought that we were just done before we even got started. Luckily, the stems were okay, so they were just a bunch of sticks. And then we weren't sure, but they did grow new leaves back, and so then they were okay, and we did get peppers that year. But we usually wait until about the first week of June. And I know that feels like real late, but they'll still have time. They'll be okay. So it's better to wait a little longer and make sure those conditions are right than planting them early, because if they get real cold, they can get stunted, and then they'll just sit there and they won't do anything. And you'll actually end up losing time as opposed to maybe just waiting an extra week. So some tips for growing. make sure not to overwater. Peppers, you don't want to be watering them like every day. We're lucky enough, our soil is a little more on the sandy side, so it drains real well. But you want to kind of let them dry out in between waterings. Even if you see them and they're a little wilted, they're still okay. Like once you water them, they'll bounce right back. It's better to, go a little longer without watering them as opposed to watering them too much. So, let them dry out, let the soil get dry, and then water them really nice and deep. They're definitely a full sun plant. We're thinking they're from Brazil and, New Mexico and Texas, that area. They like a lot of sun, so they want full sun. Like I said, our first year, we have, in the morning, a tree is shading the yard, and then in the evening, our house is shading the yard. So our plants were real small. The one, we were still proud of it. It got one pepper on it, but we were proud of them. But yeah, so put them in a nice, bright, sunny location. Avoid overhead watering, especially when the plants are flowering. If you don't have any other option, it's okay. I would just say water them in the morning so they have that sun to help them dry out. But what we've run into is sometimes if you have a lot of humidity, a lot of moisture, there's actually a fungus that can develop on the flower, and it will go through the stamen, and so it will actually get inside the pepper. And so what happens is you have a healthy looking pepper, and then you cut it open, and then there's mold inside. So it's really hard. We always tell people, hey, if you ever get one that's moldy on the inside, let us know. We'll make it right for you. But we can't tell a lot of times just by looking at the outside of them. They'll look completely healthy, and then you cut it open, and it's like fuzzy. Limiting the moisture on those flowers will help with that. And we found that some varieties seem more susceptible to it than others. But yeah, if you can do some drip tape or something where it's just going to be on the bottom, that would be best. Regular feeding, peppers definitely like to be fertilized. As far as what you use, it's really kind of your preference. We grow organically, so we use a lot of fish emulsion. They seem to really like that. Sometimes I'll use the Miracle Grow Organics. We try a lot of different things, but just follow the instructions on your packaging. So if it says, apply once a week, then apply it once a week. Whatever it says to do, you can just follow those instructions. Usually a balanced fertilizer is fine. The ones that say for vegetables, tomatoes, those are good. Or you can do something like a 10, 15, 15 once they get bigger and start flowering. Pruning, it's kind of up to you. We have 1,000 plants, so I'm not gonna go through and prune the pepper plants. If you have 4, go ahead, cut off some of those lower branches. That'll help with airflow. A lot of times those lower branches and leaves aren't going to produce a lot anyway, so just cut those off, make it look kind of like a little tree to really help with the airflow. Some people will say top your peppers, which is when they're a seedling, you cut off the top bit. That's kind of debated, so it's up to you. You can try it, see how it works. Some people say they get more peppers, but then other people have said, well, maybe, but my peppers were smaller. So I wouldn't recommend it with a bell pepper, but if it's a small, pepper, you could try it. What that does is it's the top of the plant is the same with a tree. That's where all the new growth is coming from, right? That's where the stem cells are. So you cut that off and it has to start new growth points. So when you do that, you'll see where the other existing branches are. Now new branches are going to come out from each of those leaves. That's where the nodes are. So it will kind of get bushier a lot of times. So I don't think there's necessarily anything out there that says one way or the other. So you can try it, maybe try one of them, top it, and the other one don't, and see how they compare. Pests, peppers don't usually have too much trouble with pests. The biggest thing we've run into is, especially when we have them inside, is if aphids get in there. Aphids are a big pest for pepper plants. Now in our garden, we promote a lot of nature, a lot of natural insects and natural predators. So we get lots of ladybugs, we get lots of green lacewings, and those will eat the aphids. So, you know, if you can plant some flowers, if you can attract those natural insects, you can buy them. I don't recommend buying the ladybugs. I won't get too into it because that's a whole nother talk, but it's just where they're at in their life stage. They're kind of just going to fly away. What you can buy is green lacewings, either in any stage. You can just get the eggs and they're on a little tag and you just hang them. Green lacewings are totally harmless. They won't hurt you. They won't hurt the plants. They're just going to eat the bad bugs. So they're a really great one to put in your garden. Other than that, really the only thing we've really run into is sometimes grasshoppers will eat the peppers if they're really bad. They don't seem to mind the spicy ones either. So like you'll have a pepper and then you'll turn it over and there's just a big hole. If the grasshoppers aren't out of control, then usually it's not an issue. When you have them inside, if you've ever had houseplants and you get those little gnats that fly around, those are fungus gnats. Normally they don't do any damage to a plant. What we have found is they will harm the seeds. So they lay their eggs in the soil, they hatch in the soil. So the little larva we found will actually like go into the seed and eat that new seedling when it germinates. So it was very upsetting because like these peppers were not sprouting, and so I kind of digged them up and I looked and I kind of squished the seed and here the little worm comes out. I was furious. A good solution for those, it's called mosquito bits. It's in a red bag. You can find it at like TSC and Runnings. What they're meant for is you put them in standing water, like bird baths, pools, and they kill the mosquito larva. Well, they also work on the fungus gnat larva, and it's an organic solution. It's just like a little microorganism that eats those larvae. So, you know, you just soak the pellets in water and then you water your plants with that. And then that will help get rid of those. So when it comes to choosing varieties, some things you want to look at, I would say one of the biggest things is what flavors are you looking for? So, you know, really think about how you're going to use these peppers. So like, do you want fruit salsas? Well, maybe then you'd want to go with one of those fruitier, citrusy peppers. Do you want to make like a traditional salsa where you want maybe like a more like Tex-Mex variety of peppers, like your Anaheims? Are you cooking Mexican? You might want like your guajillas, your pasilla bajillos, those kind of things. So really think about how you want to use these. And then, you know, am I going to dry these and powder them and use them as a chili powder, as a paprika, as a seasoning? Do I want them for fresh eating? You know, then you want to go for usually your thicker walled peppers, your sweeter peppers. You know, do I want a stuffing pepper? Well, there's different jalapenos out there. Some are going to be bigger than others, so some are going to be better for stuffing. How long is your growing season? So we know we don't have a great growing season here. We have been able to grow pretty much any pepper we want, you know, when we start them ourselves. The only one we've run into an issue with so far is the Hawaiian chili. And I mean, you think Hawaii, I mean, they have an infinite growing season, of course. And we get the plant and it gets peppers, they just don't quite seem to have enough time to ripen. Our friends at Baldwin are nice enough. They said this year if we bring one in a pot, we can put it in the greenhouse. So hopefully we'll be able to get some to ripen. But for the most part, if you are starting them inside and starting them early enough, you should be able to grow pretty much any of them and get them to a ripened stage. Just kind of keep in mind, you know, some of them might get kind of close where you're going to end up on the season and you probably get some peppers, but you might, you know, end up with a plant still full of unripe peppers, and that's just the way it is, and the frost is going to hit and there's not much you can do. So difficulty, There are definitely difficulty levels with different peppers. A lot of the super hot varieties are going to take a little more work to grow. If you're, don't want to put in a whole lot of effort, or you're newer to gardening and you're, still learning, there's nothing wrong with, going and buying like the Gurney's peppers or a lot of the hybrids. Those are developed to be easier to grow, like your California Wonder Bells, your big Jim peppers. Those were developed by New Mex University. So yeah, don't be afraid to start with some of those more common varieties that you find at the local greenhouses and the stores. And then, once you get more used to it, you can try starting some other ones, maybe some more difficult ones, and see how they do. If you want to just jump into a real hard one, go for it, Trial and error is a great way to learn. And then we just have a list of some of the places that we buy seeds from a lot that we really like. Texas Hot Peppers has a massive selection of peppers. We buy a lot from them. Baker Creek is really great for heirloom varieties. Johnny Seeds is going to have really nice, reliable, easier to grow varieties, really tried and true varieties. A few other ones, Hippie Seed Company, they're actually based out of Australia. So we grow an Australian broom pepper that we get from them. So they've got some neat varieties. Matt's Peppers is pretty cool. He developed his own variety of jalapeno. It's called a Matapeno. It's actually a variegated one. So the whole plant has white striping in it, and then the peppers themselves look like jalapenos, but they'll get white striping. So it's visually just a really pretty pepper. So breeding peppers. So like I said, there's been this huge surge of in the pepper community, right? Like they're called pepperheads. There's these people and they go to the competitions and they, eat all of the hottest peppers they can find, and people are making home batches of hot sauce, and people are out there breeding their own varieties. So like we're in a Facebook group, it's just called Hot Pepper Society, is that it? And it's just all of these people who really love peppers, and they love growing peppers, and some of them develop their own peppers. So some of these people are just like at home breeding and growing these peppers and selling the seeds. And it's a little weird because you'll just message somebody on Facebook and be like, here's my list, and like, here's the Venmo, and you just send it to them. But there's some people on there that we buy peppers from every single year. So yeah, there's been this huge surge. There's also a huge market and huge competition for trying to get the next world's hottest pepper, right? Everybody wants that title. And so there's people out there who swear that they have ones that are hotter than Reapers, hotter than Pepper X. They just haven't gotten them tested yet or whatever. So yeah, everybody wants that title. So if you are interested in breeding peppers, peppers are pretty good at self-pollinating. There will be some cross-pollination, and I mean, that's just insects. There are ways you can prevent that. You can isolate the flowers, putting like a little mesh baggie over them or something before they open up so the insects can't get to them. Some people will just net the whole plant, and then that way they know all of the peppers on that plant have been self-pollinized. You can also just intentionally breed peppers. If you are going to do that, it's recommended that you are choosing from the same species. And I'm going to go back. Okay, so this is the taxonomy of peppers, and I won't go through the whole thing. The family, I'm not going to pronounce that, I did not take Latin, but that's the nightshade family. So it's got your nightshade berries, but it's also got tomatoes, eggplants, potatoes. Those are all cousins of peppers. And then our genus is capsicum. When we talk about species, there's at least, they think about 26 species of wild peppers. We're going to focus mainly just on the ones that we grow, the domesticated ones. So there's Anum, Chinense, frutescens, bacatum, and pubescens. This last one is the smallest species. That's going to be your rocoto peppers. They're really unique in that when you cut them open, the seeds are black. So it looks like they're rotten or something, but that's just the way they are. If you want to see some afterwards, we've got seeds we can show you, but they're a thicker pepper, round, and then the spice varies a lot, but they're also called manzano. So it's a very small, specific species, but even that one now, people are growing new ones and developing new ones. So when we're looking at breeding, when you're choosing your two varieties that you want to cross, you're going to get the best results if you can pick two from the same species. They have crossed from different species, but sometimes, just like when you have a mule, the offspring can be sterile, or it might just not take at all. So try to choose from the same species. I promise there's enough peppers out there that you can find two cool ones in one species to cross. When you create, if you create a new pepper, generations are labeled by F and then the number, so which generation it is. So sometimes when you're buying hybrid plants, you'll see a little F1. That just means it's first generation. They crossed two different parent plants. This is the result. With that, the higher the number, the more stable the genetics are going to be. So the more likely that when you plant these seeds, it's going to grow what it's supposed to grow. When you do cross-pollinate your plant and it develops a fruit, that fruit, the genetics are going to be from the plant you planted. So, if it's a bell pepper and you crossed it with a different bell pepper, it's still going to look like whatever pepper you planted. So, sometimes I'll hear people say things like, well, I planted my bell peppers next to my jalapenos and I feel like my bell peppers got spicy. That's not how it works. No cross-pollination is going to affect the fruit from that year. What it's going to do is change the seeds that are inside that fruit. So then you take those seeds and, the next season you plant those. When that grows, that's when you're going to see, hopefully a change in what peppers it produces. So how to cross-pollinate by hand? So it's takes a little bit of work. So you're going to choose two plants. You're going to pick one to be the male and one to be the female. So we have our parts of the flower here. We have our pistil, Kelsey, stigma. Stigma.
You got your
style. There we go.
Yep.
And stamens.
Yep.
So the stamens are going to be where the pollen is. So what you're going to do is you're going to find a flower that has not opened up yet. You're going to very carefully pick off all of the flower petals. And then you are going to very carefully remove all of these stamen so that all is left is the female part of the plant. You're going to then go to your other pepper that you're choosing and you're going to get pollen from that. So a lot of people will just use a Q-tip. You can use like a really fine paintbrush, or you can just like pick one of these stamens and dust it with that. But then you're going to pollinate the top of this pistil here. You then want to, isolate this and then tag it with what the cross is. So this plant with the female part is going to be the first name, and then, crossed with whatever the other pepper variety was. And that's how you're going to self-pollinate the plants. So, definitely going to need a tweezers and a little bit of patience, probably a steady hand. But that's how these people are out here, crossing and making sure that the varieties that they want to cross are crossing. Because like I said, the peppers will self-pollinate. So if you just, leave all of those parts, you're not necessarily guaranteeing that the pollen from the other one is what's going to be creating that new pepper. Okay, and these are just our sources that I use for different things. And then we just wanted to show you. So this is our seed collection. This is how we store our seeds. So all of these are peppers. We have about 400 varieties in here, we estimate. We did not count. But if you have a lot of seeds, this is a great way to store them. We just get these if you go to a collectibles store. And then we just went to Office Depot and got these. These are little coin envelopes. And then we either put the sticker from the seed packet or just write on them. And then that way, because we are saving our own seeds, we can also write the year that each seeds are from on them. So yeah, if you want to look through this, you're welcome to. Did anybody have any questions? Yes.
You said that you label the years on there. How long can the seeds remain viable?
So that can vary. With peppers, they usually say after about a year it's going to start dropping off. But with seeds, it can always just vary. You know, it's going to depend on how well they're stored. If you store them like in the refrigerator or the freezer, they can last longer. I mean, I've had seeds where they were, 3-4 years old and they still sprouted. So, I mean, I think they found grains in like Egyptian tombs that they got to sprout. So it really just varies. Just keep in mind, the older they get, the less viable they do get. Yes.
So you had mentioned not to water every day.
Yes.
That's exactly what I did last year.
Okay, don't do that.
How often should I water and how do I tell? Is there a...
Just check the soil. So if the soil's pretty dry, a couple inches down, then you can water.
Okay. So like every couple of days?
It really just depends on, like if it's super hot outside for a week, it's going to dry out a lot sooner. Whereas, if you get rain, then you might not need to water. Just make sure if you do get rain, if it's just a little bit, then you're still going to water because you want to water nice and deep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes.
Have you ever used like the simple soil meters, or pH meters?
I haven't. We are lucky enough, our soil out at the ranch is, just natural prairie soil. It's really nice. Getting your soil tested is a great idea just to see where it's at, I know the extension will test soil. They have a soil test.
Unfortunately, NDSU closes soil lab.
Oh, shoot.
So there are other sources like University of Minnesota Extension would be a really good resource. And then there's also private labs that you can utilize.
Yeah, getting your soil tested is a good idea. And then they can also check for like nutrient levels. Oh, I forgot to mention another great nutrient to give your peppers is actually Epsom salt. Peppers and tomatoes love Epsom salt. So you can put some like in the soil when you're planting it, and you can also just dilute some in some water and water them with it. And that gives them some of those micronutrients that aren't going to be in your regular fertilizers.
How much for like a standard flower pot kind of size?
The Epsom salt's not like real dangerous. It's not going to burn. So, just a lot of times now the Epsom salt will actually have directions on the back for fertilizer use. So it'll tell you, like a tablespoon per gallon or something like that. It doesn't need a whole lot. Any other questions?
You guys actually breed your own?
So we haven't intentionally bred any peppers yet. Like we said, peppers will like crossbreed and they'll throw weird ones. Last year we had randomly a pepperoncini that's instead of starting green, they started black. They still tasted like a regular pepperoncini. They weren't any hotter, so I don't know what they crossed with, but it was something. We do have a few varieties where a pepper has grown and it wasn't what it was supposed to be. So we did save seeds and we are trying to stabilize some of those varieties to make our new species. So that's just where we're kind of letting nature do it. And if we find one and we think it's cool, then we're going to save it. So we're at generation 2 this year, I think, right?
3,
A couple of them will be Gen 3 this year. Gen F4 is where it starts to really stabilize. I think it needs to be at around 7 or 8 to be like officially classified as like a stable variety. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes?
Were you going to talk about incorporating honey with peppers?
I can.
I think it was part of the description on
Oh yeah.
the presentation?
So when we make our hot honey, all of our honey is raw, it's unfiltered, we just strain it and let it be. A lot of the hot honeys out there will add vinegar, and then that helps keep it liquidy. We don't do that, so ours will still crystallize like regular honey. But what we do is we use our dried chili powder. So we dehydrate the chilies and then we powder them, and then we mix that powder into the honey, and then we run it back through our honey sieve. So it gets the flavor and some of that finer dust, but it'll sieve out a lot of the flakes, so it still has a nice texture. We don't want that gritty texture. For ours last year, we used 2 peppers. So one was more for flavor, one was to add more heat. So you can really experiment with different peppers as far as the flavor. I know some people do it with fresh peppers. We've never done that. I just worry a little more about the safety of it versus, the dried peppers, putting the fresh peppers in there.
We had that one that we tried, but
Oh yeah, so like the first year we made hot honey, we made 4 batches, and we were at the Apple Jam, and so we just let people sample them and vote on them. And the one we were surprised at, there's a pepper called Sugar Rush Heat, or Sugar Rush Peach, excuse me. It's about habanero level heat. It's a peach variety, so it's got a great like fruity flavor to it. So we thought, wow, that one's probably really good. When we mixed it in and then we tried it, you couldn't really even taste it. It kind of just tasted like the honey, and it had almost no heat. So, some peppers you think it's going to add a lot of heat, and then it doesn't. Other ones add more flavor. So, you can just kind of experiment and, do a little bit at a time, make little batches, and just see what you like best.
Do you sell that honey?
Yes, we do. Yes?
Do you have any experience with freeze drying peppers?
We haven't. I would love a freeze dryer. I don't have one. We just have the dehydrators. Okay, well then that's all we have for you. Thank you so much.